Welcome to the Animal Wellness Podcast, all about improving the lives of animals with better policies and practices in government and business. Brought to you by Animal Wellness Action, where we believe helping animals helps us all. Here's your host, Joseph Grove.
All right, thank you again, everyone, and welcome to the show. I am your host, Joseph Grove, and we are going this week to talk to a number of our campaign leaders about what they saw as the highlights in 2025 and what is coming up for them in 2026. I think this will be a fun episode for you to listen to. You'll learn a lot, and you'll hear voices that have not been brought to the microphone before for the Animal Wellness Podcast. Our first guest, Jennifer Skiff, is our Director of International Programs, and she has, I think, some of the most exotic and exciting work in the whole organization. Her work for us takes her literally across the globe. Two of the campaigns I'm most interested in, however, for this show, are her work in our Kangaroos Are Not Shoes campaign, and then a new project she's brought to us this year, helping elephants in Africa, in the Angola region, I believe specifically. So she'll tell us more about that. Jennifer, thanks for joining us for the Animal Wellness Podcast.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you so much for asking me on to talk about our wins this year. It's been a very exciting year, and as you mentioned, I've been doing quite a bit of traveling through Africa and Australia. We launched this campaign, the Kangaroos Are Not Shoes campaign, in 2000. And as we often say, at that time, the largest commercial slaughter of land-based wildlife in the world was being fueled by a demand for kangaroo skin by athletic wear companies, primarily for soccer cleats or soccer boots. Well, after talks with Adidas for 2 years, Bjorn Gulden, its CEO, announced to us and shareholders simultaneously that it would stop producing shoes with kangaroo leather this year. And we feel firmly that has been done. ASICS then told us in an email it would stop producing by the end of 2025. That's now. That's good news. Also in an email, Umbro told us in June that it planned to discontinue production by next year, 2026, Q3. And then there was Mizuno. So Mizuno told us originally in May that it had decided to phase out kangaroo leather without giving a timeline. And that's a little bit problematic because Mizuno had more shoes that it was producing with kangaroo leather than any other company. I'm in talks with them, and this month the company confirmed that they have started to implement a phased plan to reduce the number of items that use kangaroo leather. Also, they told me that they're planning to launch an innovative alternative material with what they call superior functionality by 2026. And they told me that they're really excited about the positive impact both of these changes will have in the market. You know, this campaign proved that when advocacy is persistent and principled and grounded in fact, entire industries can and will change the way that they source materials. The athletic wear sector isn't just adjusting its sourcing policies, it's actually acknowledging that it's now creating better performing products by moving in an ethical direction. And I'm thrilled by that. I mean, how exciting is it, right?
Yeah, it's very exciting. And I want to give a shout out, and I'm sure you'll support this, to Donnie Moss, a terrific partner who has staged very effective protests. His organization, theirturn.net. I really enjoyed our collaboration with him, and it certainly seems to have contributed to our success. So thank you, Donnie. Now, Jennifer, you and I have talked in our various discussions over the year. What comes next for our work for kangaroos, right? We've not completely run the table, but we're getting close on the major athletic shoe companies who use kangaroo skin. Where else can we protect kangaroos, and what are you going to do to help them in 26?
This campaign hasn't been easy to win. And part of the reason behind that is because the group that represents the people who profit from the commercial kill has a false narrative that it sticks to. It actually tells corporations the kill is humane. It says it's sustainable, meaning that it can go on forever, and that the meat is safe. So we know that's not true. Russia banned kangaroo meat imports in 2009 due to meat contamination, and China won't even touch it. So we're creating a white paper that will serve several purposes. We've got a team of researchers and veterinarians, and they're working with scientists and scholars to create a paper that provides the facts about the ethics, sustainability, and food safety for people and pets as it relates to the commercial kill. The white paper will also provide support to lawmakers throughout the world who are considering closing off the imports of kangaroo body parts into their countries, and will make it also easier for corporations to make sourcing decisions when they have the facts about the industry available to them in one document. So this document will show an industry that has long relied on what we say is just mythology to justify what is in reality a deeply harmful and irresponsible business model. We're very excited about this.
One of the things I think this organization really does well is produce very academic, scientific analyses of our issues. So I will make sure in the show notes to facilitate a way for people to be apprised when we publish this white paper on kangaroos. So I look forward to reading it myself. Let's pivot to elephants. That is an animal very much on the minds of our listeners, of the readers of our website content. You are bringing to, I guess, fruition, it's past launch, but you're expanding work to help elephants, and I believe they're in Angola, correct me if I've misread. What are you doing to help those elephants, and what's the threat and what's the solution?
Actually, the elephants are mainly in Botswana. We're working in partnership with a Botswana-based charity called Elephants Without Borders. The project centers on the Great Elephant Corridor, which runs along the Kwando River. And that is a lifeline that forms the international borders between Angola, Zambia, Botswana, and Namibia. Angola had a 27-year civil war that depleted the elephant population. The elephants were either used for bushmeat, they were poached, or they left the country. They walked out of there due to mining and being blown up by landmines. So through this initiative, we are working, you did get this correct, we're working with the government of Angola, and we're working with Elephants Without Borders, their head of national parks, their minister for the environment, to move elephants back into the country and other wildlife. So the goal is through the Great Elephant Corridor Initiative to restore habitat connectivity and secure the essential migration corridors to have those elephants move into a fairly newly established group of a couple of national parks, the Luangwi, Luiana, and Mavinga national parks, that together create Africa's largest wildlife park now, national park, And that work is going to be vital for the survival of the world's largest elephant population at this point. That's still at risk of poaching, human-animal conflict, culling from that, and trophy hunters.
Well, excellent. And I know I'm personally looking forward to helping communicate what we're doing and bringing people up to speed and getting them involved with your work. And I know if people want to learn more, they can subscribe to animalwellnessaction.org. Go there, click sign up, and you'll get all of our outbound emails. And you can also, as we'll indicate at the end of the show, follow us on social media channels where we'll keep folks apprised there as well. Jennifer, good work last year, by golly, and good luck next year. Thank you for taking time to visit with us today. Our next guest is Don Green. He is a political director for Animal Wellness Action. And I will say further that Don is one of my favorite people on the staff because he shares with me an absolute love for the Godfather movies. So it's always nice to talk to him. Don, thank you for joining the show.
Joseph, it's a pleasure to be here.
One of the things I want to talk to you about, the main thing, is what I know is for next year for all of us, a huge initiative, and that is to defeat the Save Our Bacon Act. Now, It used to be called the Eats Act, and it's rare for us, rather than to champion a bill, to work to quash one. So for me, at least, it's a little bit more complicated than some of our ordinary efforts. Dawn, can you break it down for our listeners? What is the Save Our Bacon Act, and why is it so important for us to rally around making sure it never passes into law?
It's arguably one of the most dangerous, harmful ag policies that's been put before Congress in many, many years. So the basic core idea of Save Our Bacon is to say that the voters in California that overwhelmingly adopted Prop 12 and the voters of Massachusetts that overwhelmingly adopted Question 3, that put in place very, very rudimentary requirements for what farmers have to do, for example, with egg-laying hens or with sows, that's the female pigs that have the litters of the piglets. For many, many years, large industrial commercial farmers have kept sows in stalls that are so small, the sow can't take a step forward, can't take a step back, can't move sideways, and cannot lay down. The sow is literally contained that way. They have litter after litter after litter, and when the farmer's done, the sow is put to slaughter. The voters in California said this is unacceptable. Unfortunately, tragically, we've got the pork industry in the United States trying to lobby Congress with some very deceptive messaging to say the Save Our Bacon Act, very ironically titled, needs to be moved through Congress and signed by the president. And what that would do is that would vitiate, abolish, eliminate the requirements that voters in California and Massachusetts and any other state that had a referendum from doing this. And what it would do is it would allow pig farmers to continue to keep sows in crates where they literally can't take a step forward, a step backwards, can't lay down or skip. Defeating the Save Our Bacon Act is our number one highest legislative priority in this 119th Congress. No questions asked, because it's that damaging and that harmful. And let me just mention one thing when we talk about, what's the domestic pork industry look like? The single biggest company in the United States domestically producing pork is a company that is based in Virginia called Smithfield. Several years ago, I think 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, Smithfield Foods was purchased 100% by the Communist Party of China. And the purchase was financed by the Communist Chinese Bank. So the single largest pork producing company domestic in America is 100% owned by China. The Save Our Bacon Act is dangerous. It's harmful. It's anti-democratic. Many small and medium pork producers have complied with that. So in other words, if the Save Our Bacon Act were actually approved, what I call the good actors, the farmers that have said, okay, this is the rules, this is what we will do, they get penalized. The bad actors that don't like these rules get rewarded. It's just bad on many, many levels, and we're working extremely hard to make sure that the Save Our Bacon Act doesn't move and essentially dies.
Right. A lot of fascinating issues, as you've alluded to, are wrapped up in this. You have, of course, clearly most important to us, the animal welfare angle, and you referred to the gestation crates. And we very vividly cast that as being akin to a human being stuck in an airplane seat for a majority of their lives, not able to move, turn around, that the proportions are roughly similar. Horrible way for these animals to live. But then you also have the issue of states' rights, right? Where people should be able to say what they want or what they don't want sold within their borders. So the Save Our Bacon Act is an assault on the autonomy of states. And that issue in and of itself ought to be a lot for people to use to support the defeat of Save Our Bacon. And then, you also get into the notion of foreign ownership of American farmland. And that is something I think we all ought to be concerned about, right? How much of our agriculture are we going to turn over to foreign actors who don't have perhaps the cultural significance put upon animal welfare that Americans do. That's a huge issue. And I think of Smithfield and the way they raise pigs in China, those high-rise factory farms. Anyone who's received our emails has seen photos of these high-rise factory farms that look like old Soviet-era apartment buildings. And if the Save Our Bacon Act passes, then I think U.S. farmers are very likely to have foisted upon them similar dystopian ways of raising these animals.
Joseph, you're 100% correct. I believe passionately that if the American people, 330 million people, saw these factory farms, I love your analogy. It's a Moscow 1970 style concrete building with slits, not even windows. These animals spend their whole lives in these buildings. They never touch grass or feel dirt or feel the sun or anything like it. If they saw these things and thought the Save Our Bacon Act is going to bring those to America, a 20-story concrete box, I think it would lose overwhelmingly. And that's part of what we're trying to do is educate and engage with members of Congress for them to understand that this is going on in China today. And if the Save Our Bacon Act is approved over our protestations, it's entirely reasonable to imagine that that would be imported into the United States.
I would suppose another issue comes into mind, and that is what I think is a natural sympathy we as Americans have for the family farmer. So important in our heritage. I heard disturbingly not too long ago that among all professions, the family farmer has about the highest suicide rate because there are so many pressures going against these small farms. Economically, as these industrialized groups take more and more, put pressure on them to compete, it seems to me that a vote against Save Our Bacon is a vote for the family farmer and a very important rural way of life that is quintessentially American.
It's poetry, Joseph. That was poetry. Family farmers are struggling to compete with huge corporate-driven, or in the case of Smithfield now, government-owned and controlled mega businesses. And it's so hard for these small family farms, frequently that have been in the family for generations, to compete with these mega companies. Frequently, these family farms are the ones who said, well, okay, if the rules are changed, we will comply with them. And they are, and they would be the ones penalized, while the corporations and the government-owned say, we don't want to play by these rules. We'll just ask Congress to give us a waiver.
Wayne Pacelli, the president of our organization, and a couple of others put out a damning rebuttal against the argument that it is an economic necessity for the Save Our Bacon Act to pass, because so many of the advocates of it are saying, well, people just can't afford to raise pigs humanely. And their analysis shows that, in fact, it is very economical, that people who have made the investments you just described, Don, are doing quite well. Don, what's the TikTok on this? When do you expect Save Our Bacon to move forward? What are critical dates you anticipate for defeating this bill?
It's really next year. The chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, Congressman G.T. Thompson of Pennsylvania, has been talking publicly. He wants to try to move a farm bill through the committee. And we believe passionately that if he were to do that, he would want to put the Save Our Bacon in that. So we, on our side, are pushing back vigorously to say, if you want to move a farm bill, that's fine, but we're ginning up opposition to Save Our Bacon all the time. When I think about the time where we've got to be on our toes, most fully engaged, pushing back, I'd say January, February, and March, maybe a little bit of April.
In the show notes, I'll put a link to a very easy to complete form where listeners can add their name, and our form will automatically contact their officials in Washington so that our listeners can express their opposition to the Save Our Bacon Act. Don, is there anything else our listeners need to know about this before we let you go?
I worked on the Hill for 25 years, Joseph, for 5 members of the House and 2 members of the Senate. Constituents telling your elected members what they want them to do. Support this, oppose that. Nothing's more important. And nobody should ever think, hey, if I take a minute or 30 seconds and send an email to my congressman or my senator saying, please oppose the Save Our Bacon Act, don't think for a minute that there aren't people watching that, keeping track of this, and that information doesn't flow up the chain of command. People speaking up like that makes the difference, makes it very different. Don't think for a moment nobody cares.
Don Green, Political Director for Animal Wellness Action. Sir, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Our next guest is Kevin Chambers. Kevin is one of the most interesting people we have on staff. Kevin, I hope you won't be offended if I describe you as unassuming to our listeners. This fellow would pass you by in the park and you would say, that distinguished gentleman, but you wouldn't suspect him to be as formidable as he really is. So why don't you say a little bit about the kinds of investigations you do and the extent to which it's safe to reveal some of your methods, how you bring them about.
We have been focused this year on understanding and uncovering the animal fighting networks that are underground and illegal in the United States. We've had particular success on the cockfighting front. We operate through tips and that we get from tipsters primarily, and then we investigate it. And then we gather the information and give it to law enforcement for further action. But we've had particular success this year in conjunction with our investigator partners at Shark, who specialize in cockfighting and dogfighting investigations as we do.
Yeah, well, that's right, Kevin. You allude to Shark showing animals respect and kindness. They have proved to be great allies for us. So the work that you representing us and they do is pretty heroic stuff and has led to some meaningful arrests, some terrific instances where justice for these animals is able to be applied. And also, I think it's fair to say, correct me, we've identified areas where law enforcement has the opportunity to step up and do a little bit more. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct. Yeah, we do not give up. Mount Pleasant, Texas, earlier this year, we went, uncovered a huge cockfight in progress, but we were unable to get the sheriff's office to go in because they couldn't get a search warrant. Came back a couple of months later, and we sent our investigators inside of the cockfight where they videoed and got documentation that could not be refuted. And an arrest took place. And that's just an example of how, as difficult as these investigations are, we will not give up until we uncover the animal cruelty that's going on and law enforcement enforces it.
I'll put in the show notes a link to a video that we revealed at a press conference earlier the week of this episode's being recorded. And it shows the true brutality that cockfighting entails. I must say, before I learned about cockfighting, I easily dismissed it. Well, these are fighting birds, they're in the pit, and it's certainly not a great thing. But I didn't fully understand the set of ills that go along with cockfighting. For example, in the video, we show what these cockfighters do with birds after the match. If the bird is grievously injured, I think we see one bird being flung or swung by its feet into a pole. There's another part of the video where a cockfighter, steps on his bird's head and pulls at the legs in order to break the bird's neck. And I didn't fully understand until getting into our work more deeply the kinds of crimes that go along with it. So I suppose you look at cockfighting and you've got the bare animal cruelty, and then you have the surrounding crimes that go with it. I was surprised to hear that what accompanies many big cockfights is what I see in my own hometown, Louisville, Kentucky, with Churchill Downs, is that, women are trafficked into the area. Drugs are brought into the area. So it is not only that a cockfight represents animal cruelty, it also represents a tide on which floats other criminal activity. And cockfighting is a crime in all 50 states.
Oh, yeah, that's right, Joseph. In addition to the barbaric cruelty of cockfighting itself, these cockfights and dogfights are often associated with other crimes. They're always associated with illegal gambling. That's the reason that these cockfights and dogfights take place, is because people are there illegally gambling. And I just finished a review of the last 20 years of cockfighting busts in the state of Oklahoma. And what struck me was how almost every one of the dozens of cases also involved people being charged with drug crimes, domestic violence, theft. People that are involved in animal fighting are involved in other crimes. It's an underground organized criminal enterprise, and it undermines the safety of communities if they're allowed to go on unimpeded.
And that's why the organization animalwellnessaction.org is working hard to have passed a number of bills. We have the ACE Act, the Animal Cruelty Enforcement Act. We have the Fight Act, and then something oddly named the FBI Act. What do we hope these bills will do to animal fighting, Kevin?
Well, we need more enforcement on both the state level, local level, and the federal level. And we're trying to strengthen our laws on the federal level with these acts, such as the Fight Act, the one that has the most sponsors so far. And we're putting a lot of hope into it. We have 113 Congress people that have endorsed the Fight Act, which would strengthen our anti-animal fighting laws in the United States. For example, it would ban online gambling on cockfights and dogfights, which unfortunately is becoming a much bigger industry, especially coming out of the Philippines. And then it would halt the shipment of mature roosters domestically and internationally, because we know that one of the best ways to put a stop to this underground industry is to make it economically unviable. And it is currently a big moneymaker for people raising these fighting roosters and shipping them to Mexico and the Philippines. It would also create a private right of action where if your neighbor disturbing your peace with 1,000 game fowl roosters being raised for cockfighting, you can take private right of action to try to stop it in the courts. And then it would also enhance forfeiture provisions against cockfighters. The FBI Act would beef up the assets of the FBI, a special unit to go after animal cruelty crimes.
Kevin, you're out in the field quite a bit, and I know you're not often on the Hill, but do you have any sense for when these bills might come up for a vote or any other critical milestones for them on the horizon?
Well, I think we're getting close on the Fight Act. That could happen during this session. It's gathered a lot of momentum, but it all depends on people contacting their Congress people and asking them to vote for it and to push it through, because as the longer it takes, the more animals suffer.
Kevin Chambers, our lead investigator of Animal Wellness Action. He has a very particular set of skills. You don't want to mess with him.
You're listening to the Animal Wellness Podcast. We'll be right back after this quick word from our sponsor.
Animal Wellness Action depends on countless people like you to support our fight for animals. Join us today by donating to further our campaigns to spare countless animals from cruel and needless pharmaceutical tests. Put an end to animal fighting. Liberate farm animals from extreme confinement and so many others. Become a donor at any amount. Visit animalwellnessaction.org/donate to join our fight against animal cruelty of all kinds. Again, that's animalwellnessaction.org/donate. Thank you.
Now, back to the Animal Wellness Podcast.
Next up is Tammy Drake, or Tamara Drake, as her byline indicates her, our Director of Research and Regulatory Policy. She works for both Animal Wellness Action and the Center, and I got to say she's one of my favorite people on the team. Tammy was one of the first folks to interview me. We talked then, those many years ago, about FDA modernization, and it's been really a personal pleasure and a professional one to support her work and to make known to the public at large all of the things she's doing to spare animals from testing for new pharmaceuticals. Tammy, welcome to the Animal Wellness Podcast.
Thanks so much, Joseph. It's great to be here. And I think we have a mutual admiration society.
We had tried to get you earlier in the week to have this conversation, but it was fortuitous that we didn't get to speak until today because yesterday, this is the 18th, so yesterday, December 17th, you had a huge milestone happen with FDA modernization. Tell us about that and what led up to it.
It was the night of the 16th, and it's a huge milestone. The FDA Modernization Act 3.0 passed the U.S. Senate by unanimous consent, which is a huge moment in the modernized testing campaign. We're really excited about it. And what 3.0 does, it brings FDA regulations into line with the law Congress passed under the FDA Modernization Act 2.0 in 2022. So even though 2.0 lifted the animal testing mandate, some regulatory language still implied animal testing was required. And 3.0 finally cleans that up. And what it does is it gives drug developers clear pathways to use non-animal methods. So we've got work to do, and we're really working hard to urge the House to bring 3.0 to the floor for a vote. And that probably will happen early next year.
I'm glad you talked about 2.0 and 3.0. One of the things I struggle with in communicating the message to our subscribers, to people in social media and other places, is the difference between the two.
2.0, what that did was actually remove the mandate from the statute for new drug development. But what remained on the books were FDA regulations. Their rule book still had a couple dozen references that facially required animal testing. And that's all 3.0 did. Now, we never should have had to bring that bill. The FDA should have done it as a matter of course, updating the regulations to correspond with the new statute, but that didn't happen. So that's why we've made this move.
How are drug manufacturers responding to this? Are they relieved that this component of their testing requirements is going away potentially? Or are they somewhat reluctant to embrace some of the new paradigms that we've discussed? For example, organs on chips, artificial intelligence.
I don't believe any of the reluctance has been in the new human relevant technology. The reluctance was they didn't have clear guidance from the FDA that if they actually use these modern methods, that they would be accepted in a new drug application. So now that we're updating the regulations, which pharma has said in the past, one of their biggest roadblocks to adopting these new methods was regulations that was on the book. So this will open the door even further, give them much better confidence that regulators are going to work with them to accept these new methodologies.
Describe for a few sentences what animals endure when they are part of the pharmaceutical testing process. What kinds of things do they experience?
When you're talking about safety and efficacy testing for new drugs, I won't go into the big details on what kind of tests, but in preclinical testing, they usually, FDA in the past has required a rodent and a non-rodent species. The non-rodent is a primate or a dog, usually. And when they test the drug and to look how the drug affects the body for safety and it goes through the system, they look at ADME, which is like absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. I can't believe I remembered that. Usually they kill them afterwards, right? And a lot of times they'll start at a really high dose. The dogs and primates and rats can suffer immense pain, but it's not just the experimentation themselves, it's their lives. In barren cages, sterile areas, a lot of times they're handled really roughly. It's terrifying. I mean, most people have dogs or cats. We treat them as family members. Imagine putting your beloved dog in a cage, leaving him there, taking him out, causing them pain and fear and putting back in. And that's their life.
But it's not only the animals that suffer as a result of this old paradigm having been in place, correct? Because isn't it the case that many of these safety tests or these efficacy tests foisted upon animals later proved to be absolutely meaningless for a great majority of humans who then later take the drugs at that phase of the approval process?
The big problem with drug development, where 90 to 95% of all drugs that go through animal testing in different species and are considered safe enough to go into human clinical trials, they fail in humans. And they fail because they don't work, or they have horrible side effects, toxicities that were not detected in the animals. So that's an issue. It's a huge issue. And there's also the issue, people actually are harmed in clinical trials. People will sign up for clinical trials. And if we're relying on how it works in a beagle, it could mean devastating consequences for a human. We can do better if we focus on human biology. This is a win-win. This isn't, it's definitely an ethical animal concern, but it's also ethical when we think of people in need of treatments and cures. It's really a big deal that we focus on that human biology.
Tammy, what's happening next? You mentioned that the House needs to do what the Senate did and pass FDA Modernization 3.0. How confident are you? And then I assume the next step is it goes to the president's desk for signature. Am I right?
We truly believe this bill is so bipartisan and it makes so much sense on both sides of the aisle. And fingers crossed, early January.
Well, what a nice start to the year that would be.
Of course, we need to urge pharma to lean into this shift because FDA is actually opening the door. We need them to walk through it. FDA has promised in their roadmap they're going to incentivize the use of non-animal methods. But we need pharma to walk through. So we will be monitoring that. But, outside of the federal agencies, we're really focusing on making sure Ridgeland Beagles are adopted into loving homes, pushing to shut down Marshall Bioresources, which is the last remaining major beagle breeding facility in the U.S. They're based in upstate New York. And making sure that private companies don't expand primate research, just as the federal government is moving away from it. So I think the bottom line, Joseph, is the shift toward human relevant science is real. And it's been a groundbreaking year to modernize testing. And now the job is making sure everyone follows through.
And last but not least, Wayne Pacelli, the president of Animal Wellness Action and the Center for a Humane Economy. Wayne, you and I recorded this session once, but it has been a very eventful intervening 7 days. So I'm glad you agreed that it was appropriate we redo so you can talk about some of the big things that happened last week. So what I hope to get from you is a special emphasis on recent developments and an overall look at 2025. And then your take on what we can expect next year. Where are the big battles and what do we need to do to make sure we win them? So all that good, sir. What's been going on lately?
Well, Joseph, Animal Wellness Action, as you have conveyed to our listeners before, works on driving public policy outcomes, laws, and we seek to enforce those laws to stop cruelty to animals. The Center for Humane Economy seeks to influence businesses and to get them to account for animals in their supply chains, R&D programs, and other operations. So those twin levers have the prospect, if our programs are well executed, of saving millions or billions of animals. You know, the old framing was, well, if we don't do this to animals, then it's going to be bad outcomes for people. Quite the opposite. And our work proves that when we're good to animals, we're good to the whole of society. And that's why helping animals helps us all. In terms of our practical work, you know, we, I think, have had a banner year, right? We take on tough fights. We're never going to bat 1,000 when you're taking on all these fights. But we've had some incredible outcomes. And I'd say at the top of the list is our Kangaroos Are Not Shoes campaign. In 2025, we ran the table with all major global athletic shoe companies. I'd also say on animal testing, this was just a watershed year. Our drug development system in particular was broken. We have enormously high costs for drugs. We have slow delivery of palliatives and cures. In fact, we don't have cures for so many of the major afflictions that humans contend with. So this is one of the reasons why the R&D costs are so high and why consumers pay so much for drugs that often aren't working. And this is a kicker, Joseph. The fourth leading cause of death in the United States is adverse reactions to drugs. So the drugs aren't all that safe, as well as not delivering, much promise on some of the major diseases. Our FDA Modernization Act set up the new leadership within the Trump administration at FDA, National Institutes of Health, and the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And they have made a series of game-changing announcements to phase out animal testing over the next few years. They've called out beagle testing, primate testing, taking a serious look at banning importation of wild-caught primates into the U.S. and winding down the work of national primate centers, which house tens of thousands of primates. I can't tell you what a big moment. I can't underscore sufficiently what a big moment this is. Finally, just in terms of just the first tranche of issues, Joseph, we took on a campaign called Dunking the Milk Mandate in the National School Lunch Program. And since the 1940s, our Congress dictated that all fluid beverages offered to kids getting nutrition assistance in the public schools basically are cow's milk. And the truth is, perhaps 40% of the kids in the National School Lunch Program are lactose intolerant to one degree or the other. This was a prescription for illness in the classroom, for barriers to learning. You can't pay attention to the lesson when you're doubled over in your chair or you're rushing to the bathroom and have diarrhea. In more serious cases, it may, lactose intolerance may cause, asthma attacks or other serious maladies. Then you think of all the food waste for those kids who kind of got the message from their body telling them, don't drink this. And they're throwing away perhaps 40% of the milk. USDA itself says 29% of milk cartons are thrown away in the trash unopened. So the kids don't even take a sip. So what we've done is, through the Congress, passed legislation, a series of amendments to a larger milk policy bill that incorporate the provisions of our fiscal act, the Freedom of the School Cafeterias and Lunches Act, to give kids plant-based milk options, to stipulate that schools are required to give plant-based milk options to kids who bring a note indicating that they're lactose intolerant from a parent, guardian, doctor, whomever. And then this new language that the president is going to soon sign will offer schools the option to stock plant-based milk for all kids if they wish it. And that just reflects what's happening in the marketplace. You go to any coffee house, supermarket, plant-based milks are right beside the cow's milk, whether it's oat milk, almond milk, soy milk. So we eliminated just a couple of years ago, the animal testing mandate. Now we've eliminated the milk mandate in the schools. We're pressing ahead with our Kangaroos Are Not Shoes campaign and ran the table there. So I think just as highlights, Joseph, I mean, that just tells you a little bit about our work, but those are three biggies.
Yeah, they were big indeed. And it was interesting to watch how so many of them really got progress in the last working week of the year for this Congress. Next year, I know we need the House to sign on to Modernization 3.0 and talk about how you believe that's going to go, what needs to happen there. And then also the expansion of our work to protect kangaroos is about to begin as well. And any kind of preview you might want to talk about relative to other markets we'll face would be appreciated.
It's important that we as an organization, as a movement, do take a victory lap on some of these new policies, these pronouncements. But at the same time, let's also realize that no issue ever ends. We have to be vigilant. We have to keep pressing. Kangaroo killing continues. We're not clear at what level, and we're not clear how the closure of these foreign markets, the primary commercial value of the kangaroos, which is their skins, is going to affect the commercial shooting industry. It's definitely going to decline. But, the industry will try to have new products, right? They've been pushing kangaroo meat into pet food. So we're doing a major report on pet food made from kangaroos. And we're going to try to get these companies that are using kangaroo meat, which is not safe. These are animals killed out in the wild in a warm weather continent, right? Australia is, not too far below the equator. It's warm. These people are out in the outback and they're killing these animals. I mean, refrigeration is not, quickly the destination for the carcasses. So there are food safety issues there. And you mentioned the FDA Modernization Act, and we did pass the FDA Modernization Act 3.0 in December to accelerate this transition to an animal-free and toward a human-based biology set of screening methods and strategies. But, even the great pronouncements from Dr. McCary at FDA and Bobby Kennedy Jr. at HHS, we have to hold people accountable. We have to make sure that these transitions that are being promised are being actually executed. So we need to stick with that on all those fronts. And I'll also say that, we're in real battles on wildlife issues. We're in a battle to keep federal protections for wolves. We've been in court to defend them. We're the leading voice for them in Congress. And we lost a very narrow, it was a narrow vote in favor of delisting wolves in the House. We need to block that in the Senate. So by no means are our opponents in any position to claim victory on this issue. They've got another chamber to get through, and we're going to be there steadfastly in their way. Meanwhile, on barred owls, this is a 30-year plan to kill 500,000 barred owls. We're just starting. We had a setback in the Senate, but all along we had a backup plan, which was our federal lawsuit. And we also have a backup plan in the Congress to defund barred owl killing. This was a tough path that we chose for a Congressional Review Act resolution, which the party not holding the presidency is going to always be skeptical of. So procedurally, that was going to be a challenge. I knew it. I wanted to have the fight. Now we know what some of those challenges are, but we are absolutely committed to stopping this barred owl kill. And we're grateful to all of our supporters for being so active on that. I didn't get one piece of mail from our supporters saying, "Oh, I think the barred owl should be killed." And toward the end of this process in 2025, we learned that the barred owl killing plan was going to be a tool to also kill northern spotted owls and to get after old growth forests in the Northwest. These are terrible outcomes. And the original framing by some proponents of this is that we need to kill barred owls to save spotted owls. Wrong. That is absolutely not the case. This plan is being used to kill spotted owls and to cut down old growth forests, which the spotted owls depend upon, and so many other species.
I would be remiss if I didn't notice that it is end of year time. And I'm reminded of something that Harold Ross, the founder of the New Yorker, once said to Dorothy Parker. He was encouraging her to come by and do more writing for the New Yorker when it first started. And Dorothy Parker said, "Well, I did, but somebody was using the pencil." Just a slight joke of Harold Ross's frugality. And when you invest in animal wellness action, that's the kind of frugality that we bring to our work, right? Such low overhead, no corporate offices, no fancy, equipment. We each bring our own devices. And I say all that to say that when you invest in our work, you really are getting to the heart of the work, making sure that your dollars end up doing the absolute most good. So our director of philanthropy would certainly want me to remind everyone that it is end of year time, or perhaps the beginning of the year as you hear this. And we really count on you for your support. So, Wayne, I hope I didn't hit that nail too hard on the head, but it's an important point.
Well, Joseph, it was well stated. And the frugality is something that is an ethic of mine, and all of our team members have that same sensibility. So this is so important that people understand not only our thrift, but also that we do a lot of damage with the weapons that we do hold in our hands. It's not just that we're tight with a penny. We are effective. Who is passing laws like this? We took the barred owl issue that was passing by. That was just going to go uninterrupted. We made it a national issue. We put it in the national spotlight. The world knows about it, and we're not done with it. We started the effort and with our friends at Switch for Good to eliminate the milk mandate. That got done in 3 years. That's actual record time in the Congress. We took on the FDA Modernization Act. We led that campaign. We passed that within a single Congress. That now you're seeing the effects that we're turning around the entire animal testing paradigm. And we're dismantling it with the aid of government agencies, and even pharma and others understand that this was a broken model. So our Animal Cruelty Enforcement Act, we're going to do our best to create a prosecutor's unit at the Department of Justice to focus on animal cruelty crimes. Already, the Attorney General, responding to our demands, has given a memo to all 93 U.S. attorneys to make animal cruelty a priority in their offices. Who has this kind of record? I mean, we're a relatively small organization punching way above our weight. So I'm writing a letter to our shareholders, if you will, our supporters, saying you cannot find a better organization to invest in, pound for pound, with all these impacts, taking just a small amount of money and turning it into change for millions and billions of animals.
Well said, Wayne. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to everyone who listens to this podcast. Know that we are very grateful for you. Be sure to visit animalwellnessaction.org for all of our news and information, and to sign up for our news alerts. You'll get Wayne's blogs. He talks about that shareholder letter. Wayne is a terrific writer. I don't curry any favor with him by saying that, but he is a 2-time New York Times bestselling author. So when you get his content, you're getting meat, real in-depth arguments, facts on animal welfare issues. You'll get those by signing up for our news alerts. And you can find us on Facebook, X, Instagram. And of course, we invite you to follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher, or Spotify. I'm your host, Joseph Grove, and we look forward to seeing you again in the new year with more episodes of the Animal Wellness Podcast.